Ho ho buddies, want to put online games. I'm Gareth and today we're playing Chaos Head. Last time, at about 7 PM, everybody disappeared. We left our little container. What's it called? What are those things called? Shipping container. We left our little shipping container on the top of a block of flats to find out that nobody was around. We went to the Shibuya Scramble. Is that what it's called? Shibuya Scramble? And it was completely deserted. Why? We don't know. Let's find out. What was going on? This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. I closed my eyes and cradled my head. This was a dream, an illusion. This couldn't be reality. Yes, it was true that I wanted to live a quiet and peaceful life all by myself. I didn't want anyone to interfere with me, and I didn't want to get involved in anything. But that didn't mean I wanted to live in a world where no one existed. If no one else existed, who would pay for my living expenses? Priorities. If no one else existed, who would make boxed lunches for me to eat? If no one else existed, who would play ESO with me? If no one else existed... A sound. I'd heard a sound. It hadn't come from me. It'd been from someone else. Someone was here. Someone other than me was nearby. I felt like I'd been saved. As I'd thought, it was just a coincidence. It only appeared like there was no one here. In truth, no one had disappeared. I wasn't the only one left in the world. I was so relieved that I almost started crying. I turned my gaze toward the sound. Who is that? It was a boy in a wheelchair. A short distance away from me, though still in the middle of the intersection, he sat quietly in place. I couldn't quite figure out how old he was. If I had to guess from his size alone, I'd say he looked like he was in elementary school. He was wearing his hat so low that I couldn't see his expression very well. But... we meet at last. I could hear the boy's voice extremely clearly. It felt like he was whispering directly into my ear, which made me turn around. Of course, there was no one there. Excuse me, sir, do you know what's going on? Here. Even though he was younger than me, I ended up speaking formally to him. Why is there no one here? Would you happen to know the reason why? Yes, I know why. Despite how young his voice sounded, there was nothing childish about it. But more importantly, did you receive my message? Is this Shogun? Message? What message? I had no idea what he was talking about. Who are you? The boy moved his wheelchair forward slightly. The wheelchair was old and it made a rusty sound as it came closer to me. Whose eyes are those eyes? Yes. Oh, he said yes. I was confused. Why had he murmured, whose eyes are those eyes just now? Who was he? You must awaken. Quickly. Because if you don't, many more people are going to die. What the hell are you... I rubbed my eyes to wipe away my tears, and because of that I was finally able to get a clear look at the boy's face. Whoa, hello. Ah! The boy wasn't a boy. His skin was covered with wrinkles like an old man. His cheeks were hollow. His eye sockets had sunken into an abnormal extent. His pupils were cloudy. He had no eyebrows. I know what voice to give this guy. And his body was as small as a child's. I am Shogun. There he is. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. My head felt like it had been struck by a hammer. The ground was shaking violently. No, my body was falling over. I shot my hands out onto the asphalt to keep myself upright. What? What had he just said? Shogun. He was... Shogun. Don't forget. Oh, you mustn't run away. I lifted up my head and watched as Shogun, who had definitely turned his back to me, left Scramble Crossing. His wheelchair was getting farther and farther away, making a creaking sound as it moved. The thought of chasing after him and pressing him for answers didn't even cross my mind. I didn't even think of running up and punching him in the face or for dragging me into this either. I wasn't even remotely a confrontational person. My head started to hurt. The area around my temples throbbed with pain. Still cowering on the spot, I tried to endure it. Taku. In the world without sound, a discordant noise began to spread, an all-encompassing static. Whose voice was that? Don't look at me. Taku. What had previously been just a random discordant mess of garbled static gradually turned into a real voice. Someone gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Teh, you're in the way, assholes. What the hell's your problem? Kids these days. Could it be some kind of performance? Taku. While still trying to endure the pain of my headache, I looked up. Oh, hello. The demon girl. Remy was peering at my face as she stood over me. Eyes that were clear and full of life. Eyes that looked at me. And only me. Again. This girl had appeared out of nowhere once again. Can you walk? Here. She wrapped her hand under my arm and tried to make me stand up. I shrieked and shook her off. I came to my senses and looked around. I was still in the middle of the street, but it wasn't deserted anymore. There were people around me in every direction, walking every which way without paying me any mind. Taku. Remy, with a face that looked like she was about to cry, reached out to me once more. Listen to me, Taku. Stay back! Oopsie. When I screamed, the throbbing in my head transformed into an intense stabbing pain. Even so, I ignored it, scrambling back on all fours to try and get away from Remy. It was you, wasn't it? That was your delusion. And you made me see it. Controlling my mind, attacking my psyche. You fucking demon! I'm gonna kill the likes of you with my sword. As soon as I get back to my base, I'll get my D-sword. An abrupt impact ran through my cheek. It stung with pain and it began to heat up. She slapped me. Ah! She was going to kill me once and for all. Scurrying back on all fours, I tried as hard as I could to escape with my life. But Remy quickly grabbed my hand. With strength I never thought a girl could have. She pulled me toward her. Oh, it's a nice hug. And embraced me. Her soft form gently enveloped my own. It was so warm. I could smell a tiny hint of sweat. Her silky hair tickled the tip of my nose. Pull yourself together. With such an anticlimax, my whole body felt like it was about to give out. It's not safe for you to stay here. The voice was slightly shaky. I couldn't tell if she was crying or not. Because the light's turning red. How did she find me? I was so confused. Was she not going to kill me? Why was she helping me? The hallucination from before, where all of the people of Shibuya disappeared. It wasn't something she'd forced me to see. When I felt such a kind, gentle warmth. When she'd embraced me so innocently. It took everything I had believed up until that point. It shook everything I had believed up until that point. Could it be that Sakihata Rimi wasn't actually a demon at all? Or was it foolish to believe that? What if this was just a cunning way to deceive me? Regardless, one thing was for sure. With Rimi hugging me, I felt an incredible sense of relief. I had no idea what to cause such a strange sensation. Upon letting go of me, Rimi put my face between her hands, then stared at me once again. Her eyes were slightly red. Please, Taku. Come with me. Okay? For some reason, I nodded. We were standing still, alone in the middle of the empty intersection. A number of people on the sidewalk waiting for the pedestrian signal to change were watching us closely. We could hear a few people laughing here and there. Many cars had their headlights trained on us and were starting to honk their horns. Rimi grabbed my hand tightly and started running toward the sidewalk. She pulled me along with her and I followed. With countless horns blazing at us, we made it to the sidewalk. Rimi breathed a sigh of relief and stopped. My hand was still in hers. Just being held in this way made me feel more and more at ease. I wanted to submit myself to this feeling. I wanted to stay like this forever. Rimi turned back in my direction. I'm glad you're okay. She smiled an incredibly happy smile. I didn't know whether it was real, an act, or what exactly it was. But... let go. Because I've been so hostile to her until now. Because I'd thought of her as a demon until now. If I let her win me over like this, I felt like I'd cease being myself. Ah, sorry. She quickly let go of my hand. Anyway, you really gave me a scare. You were all huddled up in the middle of the road. I had no idea that what I was gonna do once the light turned red. I turned my back to Rimi as she started talking cheerfully. I walked off, pushing my way through the crowd of people. I'm going home. Oh, okay, then I'll walk back with you. I know you're not feeling too hot. Her voice chased me from behind, but I shook my head in refusal. Taku. The cheerfulness from before had vanished from her voice. I felt terrible, considering how much she'd done to help me. So I... Thank you. Barely, just barely managed to squeeze out those words. Oop, okay. To think that the 3 investigative divisions would actually be merged into one. Staring at the detectives gathered in the Shibuya Police Department's conference room, Ban Yasuji thought that to himself. The Inokashira line, Shibuya Station public bathroom homicide case, or as the media called it to amuse themselves, the vampire case, had caused an increasingly serious drop in manpower. With 3 brutal murders occurred within the same jurisdiction within the same period of time, the possibility of a single perpetrator became more and more evident. A suggestion had been raised that the Cornelius Tower mass suicide case be handled by the Juvenile Division, but since the media had been treating it as a part of New Gen, there was the possibility that if the police treated the case differently, they'd be subjected to criticism. Therefore, it was only natural that the Central Office had chosen the only remaining option, to merge the several investigation headquarters. With this integration now in place, the group was reviewing the series of new-gen cases one by one. The projection screen at the front of the conference room displayed a series of photographs of the crime scenes one after the other. Sewer had been chosen to hold the presentation. He'd stayed up all last night going over the documents endlessly. "Good work," Van muttered internally, chin resting in his hands. The Cornelius Tower mass suicide case went down on September 7th. Took place on. Of the 4 incidents with that the mass media has been referring to as New Gen, it was the first to occur. At 11:30, a group of 5 men and women fell from the helipad on the roof of the Shibuya's Cornelius Tower. There were no survivors. All 5 were underage high school students, 3 male, 2 female. Out of the 5, 2 attended the same school, while the remaining 3 each attended different schools. The autopsy of the bodies revealed that each of the 5 had small traces of flesh embedded beneath their fingernails, along with scratches on the palms of their hands. From this information, we can assume that the 5 fell while holding hands. There was no sign of any suicide notes on the roof. It appears that the 5 victims all came together after school and headed toward Cornelius Tower together. As for further proof that there is more to this incident than a mere group suicide, the roof of the Cornelius Tower is off limits to all non-personnel. At the time of the incident, the door to the rooftop was locked, and none of the 5 victims' fingerprints were found on the doorknob. The key to the rooftop was not found among any of the 5 victims' belongings. This suggests that someone other than the victims may have been present at the scene before and after the incidents occurred. The investigation is proceeding under the assumption that the third party possessed the key to the door, locked it, and left before or after the incident. We've already conducted interviews of all Cornelius Tower Hotel employees, and nearly every one of them has an alibi. We are now in the process of interviewing the employees of the companies hosted in the tower. Currently, we have yet to find a motive for any of the 5 victims to commit suicide. For 4 out of the 5 victims, those related to them in some way, such as family members, friends, school teachers and so forth, all declare unanimously that there was no reason for any of them to commit suicide. The slideshow swapped to a picture of the second case, the Shibuya Station undergrad and fetus homicide case. Next. I don't know if this music is appropriate for this scene. Let's discuss the case known colloquially as the man-child case. The incident occurred on September the 19th, 12 days after the group dive incident. The first to discover the body was an employee of a karaoke box located near the scene. The body was found at approximately 5 AM. The victim is 21-year-old Konoe Chisuyo, a third-year college student living in Shibuya Ward. The victim was already dead when he was found. The time of death is estimated to be around 1 AM on the 19th, about 4 hours before the body was found. The body's abdomen was unnaturally swollen and a fetus was discovered inside it upon examination. The autopsy revealed that the victim's abdomen had been cut open while they had been alive, and the fetus had been inserted inside. The fetus is believed to have been already dead at that point in time. The victim died after his abdomen was sewn back together. We found traces of thread being torn from the wound, leading us to believe that he'd been scratching at the sutures prior to his death. Good God. The fetus was found to have been developed for at least 8 months, which leads us to believe that it was removed from the mother's body via C-section. The mother of the fetus has not yet been determined, and whether they are alive or dead is similarly unknown. Forensic analysis of the DNA was shown that the fetus and the victim are unrelated. To support this, the fetus's blood type is B and the victim's blood type is A. Sewer took a breath. He seemed exhausted from all the talking. Furthermore, he must have been awfully nervous giving a presentation in front of so many senior detectives. Next, we have the third case. The Maruyamacho crucifixion homicide case. After a short delay, the next slide displayed a photo of the crucifixion crime scene. This is a photo of the crime scene. The incident occurred on September the 29th. The victim is 56-year-old Ota Hisashi, a professor at Toto University. The first to discover the body was a man living in an apartment near the crime scene. The victim's cause of death was strangulation. After they were killed, the body was pinned to the wall with 10 small metal spikes. As you can see, the body was has next to no external wounds. A few of the spikes penetrated the body, but the spikes were generally affixed to the victim's clothing. The media is referring to it as the crucifixion, the bloody rare stake, or other similar names, despite the fact that there was no bleeding at all. The spikes are sold by the German company Kreuznagel. In actuality, they are stakes with a distinctive, long, cross-like shape. As the killer ultimately elected to use cruciform objects, the investigation is proceeding while examining the crime from a religious angle. We've received several testimonies detailing that between 9 and 9:30 p.m, the time the incident was occurring, the continuous sound of nails being driven into the wall could be heard for tens of minutes in the vicinity of the crime scene. As the victim's estimated time of death is at almost exactly the same time as this, we believe that the victim was likely killed right where the body was found, or somewhere near the scene. In addition, although the statement may not be entirely credible, we've received testimony claiming that a female student from Sumai Private Academy was seen at the crime scene. Lastly, there is Inokashira Line Shibuya Station public bathroom homicide case, known colloquially as the Vampire Scene case. The incident occurred on October the 10th and the body was discovered by a station attendant at around 5:30 a.m. The victim's identity remains unknown. There were no belongings left behind that may point toward their identity. The time of death was estimated to be around 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. the day prior. That's a long window of opportunity. All blood had been drained from the body and it was left in a state resembling that of mummification. As you are already aware, this photograph was taken by an unknown individual and was sold on the internet auction site for about 50 minutes before the body was found. Wow. I guess I'd forgotten that. As he listened to Sua's explanation, Bang gave a light click of the tongue. Seems like death is what's in these days. Oh, and we've stopped. Finished chapter 3. Chapter 4, D-Sword. Cool. Science City was a pair of buildings located just south of the Shibuya Scramble Crossing. A small plaza rested in front of the entrance to the east building. While it was not nearly as big as the ones in front of Hashiko, the Moyai statue, or other popular destinations, it still found itself used quite often as a meeting place. Even now, around a dozen people were staring at their cell phones waiting for their engagements to begin. There she is. Among those few, only one girl wore an oddly stern expression on her face as she idled a high school student known as Ayoi Sina. She was standing next to the escalator leading down the Inokashira line station. She leaned her back against a nearby white pillar as she thoroughly scanned the environment with her gaze. In contrast to both the sharpness of her gaze and the season, she was nibbling on a popsicle, which in turn made her appear incredibly charming to the casual observer. In truth, the girl was not waiting for anyone but was instead quietly observing the passers-by. From where she was standing, she could see all the way to the Jumbotron, located at Scramble Crossing. A music video from a famous singer was being displayed on it, and on the lower portion of the screen, a news ticker was reporting the latest information on the recent string of incidents, colloquially referred to as New Gen. Not a day went by without New Gen related news. It was everywhere. TV, newspapers, the internet, weekly magazines, jumbotrons, electronic billboards. Everywhere. Although Sina had absolutely no interest in the phenomenon, she would often overhear people speaking about it as she passed them by on the streets of Shibuya. Whose eyes are those eyes? Over the past few days, she begun to see several people wearing t-shirts with those words emblazoned on them. In Shibuya, the phrase had become popular as an obscure meme, and it was now starting to really take off. Despite the brutal scene the words originated from, people happily walked on down the streets raving about how well the shirts were selling at souvenir shops in Harajuku, a clear indication of how disinterested people were in anything other than themselves. Sina snorted quietly, in a contemptuous display, finishing the last bite of her popsicle, and closed her eyes softly without losing her stern expression. She listened carefully to the noise of the city. An abundance of different sounds billowed in front of the station on the Sunday afternoon. The roar of trains arriving in the platform, the blaring horns of taxis, people walking and talking, the background music coming from the jumbotrons, and from inside the Science City stores, the announcements telling people how to safely ride the escalators. The sounds were never allowed to end. Before one sound finished, another one would appear, creating a multi-layered discord that rang throughout the station. In the midst of all the discordant noise, Sina focused her attention only on the people's voices. Her mind blocked out all other sound, and their words soon became clear. Whoa. Those are the words of the song, they're one band, but meh. Especially living under a rock to not know who Phantasm is these days. Whose eyes are those eye shirts? S my D. What happened? My mug would end up on the news. Insightful. A short click of the tongue escaped from Sina's mouth, and she stopped listening soon after. There was nothing of value to be found in any of the noise. After all, noise was simply that. Noise. This feeling of someone's gaze on me. Am I imagining it? Once more, Sina examined her surroundings. For a while now, she'd been feeling a repulsive sensation, like cold fingers caressing her spine. A gaze being cast upon her by an unknown entity. One with which she was unable to pinpoint exactly what the source was. Sina pushed herself off of the pillar that she was leaning against. Then, as if she just remembered something, she stared down at the popsicle stick in her hand. Looks like I lost. Huh. Gradually growing more and more discontent, she wrinkled her brow and began to walk quickly toward the station. That sky. Why is it so blue that it makes me want to cry? Because someone wished for it to be. I didn't wish for it. No, but I did. Oh. Because this place is your image world, but at the same time it's mine as well. Hey. I just realised that we're not actually Sina anymore. I'm guessing so anyway. That sky, where is it? Wherever you wish for it to be. Is it okay for me to wish for it? What does that mean? Good morning! Come on, it's time to wake up! Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey! Sarah Tan was calling me. Last night's Ep of Blood tune was awesome. Oh, it's Sarah Tan, okay. Sarah Tan played a huge part in it, and there was a super hot kiss scene. The animation quality was practically movie tier 2. Movie tier 2. If you wake up, I'll give you a good morning kissy poo. Wait, what am I saying? Stupid, I didn't mean it, you dope. Sarah Tan was calling me. Plus, she was saying some things that I couldn't not wake up. I tore the blanket off my body and got up from the sofa with a groan. Hey, just... How long are you going to sleep for, you big dum-dum? If you keep on sleeping, I'm going to bash you with a samurai condenser and wake you up real good. The moment I turned off my alarm clock, the voice of Sarah Tan that had been echoing throughout the room disappeared. Morning, Sarah. The Sarah alarm clock I had was very useful. If I didn't turn it off, the volume would slowly get louder and louder, and if I still didn't get up, an obnoxious buzzer sound would ring out. I wanted it to be Sarah Tan who woke me up in the morning, so I made it a point to wake up and turn it off before the buzzer. I'd only failed to do so once or twice so far. After all, being woken up by Sarah Tan was a great way to start the day. Waking up was the absolute worst. I played video until dawn, and the couch had been extremely uncomfortable once I actually had gone to sleep. But having her to wake me up helped alleviate some of that pain. Today was a school day. I'd skipped a day last week, so my minimum attendance chart was really starting to fall apart. With the chart, I was only slated to go twice this week, but because of that deviation, I was stuck with having to go 3 times instead. I didn't want to go, but it'd be much worse if I didn't. If I missed any more days, I wouldn't be able to graduate. Then again, whether or not I graduate made no difference to me, to be honest. Just a moment ago, I'd been having a dream with Rumi in it. It was a strange dream. One that felt terribly wistful. One that felt terribly lonesome. One that felt terribly sad. And one that felt terribly distant. Would Rumi come to school today? I've been thinking about that, about the day before yesterday constantly. I've been thinking about it so often that I'd even forgotten to play ESO yesterday. There'd been the appearance of Shogun and the delusion where every person in Shibuya disappeared, but I was barely giving either of those things any thought. It had to have just been a delusion of mine. There was no way Shogun could be such an old man, and the idea of people just disappearing from Shibuya or whatever was completely ridiculous, so there was no point worrying about it. It'd been a horribly realistic delusion, sure, but the fact that I'd allowed myself to fall for something so unrealistic so easily and get all freaked out about it was just embarrassing. But regardless above all else, I was thinking about Rumi. The girl I'd been calling the Demon Girl until only a couple of days ago. Most of what I'd felt back then was shaky and surreal, as if it was some sort of dream, but I could still vividly remember the sensation of Rumi's body embracing my own. If she hadn't done that, I could have gone insane and lost myself completely. Why had Rumi saved me? Maybe because we really were friends. I didn't have any memories of us being classmates now. Let alone, excuse me, let alone since first year. Nor did I remember going to the movies with her along with Masumi-kun. But the way she treated me was definitely how you treat a real close friend. She'd even seemed like she'd been close to crying when she held me. That, at the very least, I didn't think was an act. That was the first time I'd ever seen a girl care about, let alone cry over an otaku freak like me. When she treated me like that, all of my fears and suspicions were blown away in an instant. In fact, it made me feel like I might fall in love with her. No. Obviously couldn't let myself do that. Confusion invaded every corner of my mind. How was I supposed to act around Remy from now on? Was Remy my ally or my enemy? Was Remy the new gen culprit? She'd saved me. That was an undeniable fact. But it was just as much of a fact that I'd seen her standing still as could be at the scene of the crucifixion covered in blood. On my way to school, I stopped by Shoto Park. Right, that was a lot of stuff to happen in barely half an hour? How long have we been? 35 minutes. Alright, well, I think we'll leave it there. And we're going to find out what next time on Borderline Games. Exactly why we saw Shogun and Shogun's an old man in a wheelchair. What Remy's goal is. And much more. I'm also going to give my voice a rest because apparently it's making me cough. Have a good evening. I'll see you later. Bye-bye. Bye-bye-bye.